Today I want to do something special and talk about the language of Black Panther. It's a bit different because this time I've actually done some research, almost a half hour's worth. And also because I have two Black Panther shirts now, so it seems a waste just to use one for the video. So let's make a second video about it. So to start, the accent that T'Challa and T'Chaka used in Civil War was based on John Candy's natural accent, because that would be the easier way to go. But for the movie, they had to bring in a dialect coach named Beth McGuire to flesh it out a little bit more. But the important part is that she gave them several options for how their accent should be, so that they all had their own individual idiolect. But I'm more interested in the actual spoken language that you can't understand without subtitles. It's a language called Isik-Xhosa, which is probably pronounced terribly wrong. Isik-Xhosa is a Bantu language spoken in South Africa, which, as far as I can tell, is nowhere near Wakanda. It is the native language of John Connie, so I think that's why they chose it, because they've already established that that accent is more or less what Wakandans sound like. And so Beth McGuire gave audio samples of the language Isik-Xhosa, which I'm just going to keep saying as many times as I can until I eventually start sounding pretty good. And so each one of them sounds a little bit different. My favorite one was Forrest Whitaker, because his almost sounded kind of New Zealand, Black Panther. Like he was, like I always say that New Zealand just changes all of their vowels into E's, and this was kind of, it sounded a little bit like that. Now, I'm sure you can tell that the most interesting feature of Isik-Xhosa is that it has clicks involved. And a lot more clicks than I thought originally. It's got 3 click groups of 6 clicks each, so 18 clicks total. You got dental clicks, which are just your teeth like that. Lateral clicks, which is on the side of your mouth, like if you were ever to call a horse for some reason. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but that's how I was told to do it. That's the one that's actually in the word Isik-Xhosa. And then there's the post-alveolar click, which is that ridge behind your teeth. That's the alveolar ridge. So it's a little bit behind that with a... That's actually probably palatable. You want to pull it a little bit forward from that, I think. You can see how this is incredibly difficult for an English speaker. We're not used to having that many consonants. Even in the word Isik-Xhosa, it has XH, which is actually a aspirated lateral click, which I'm not good at aspiration because the whole concept doesn't really make sense to me. Like, to aspirate, you let out a puff of air as you do the consonant. But, like, isn't that how sound works? You have to have a puff of air, otherwise you're just grunting into the back of your mouth. Like, I don't have anyone to answer these questions for me. But there are other reasons why this is such a difficult language for native English speakers. I don't think it would matter whether you were in British English or American English, and honestly, when this cast was announced and everything, I heard people saying, oh, I've never seen such a predominantly African-American cast, but like my gut instinct was, I'm sure some of them are British, and a lot less were British than I was expecting. I don't know, I've been getting hosed a lot thinking people are American, but they're just really convincing British people. But I digress. Isik-Xhosa is also an agglutinating language, which English does to a very small degree. German does it more. Turkish does it a lot. It's where you just keep adding suffixes to a root word, like a noun or a verb. You just add stuff to it, and then that fills in what we would use much smaller words for, you know, prepositions and whatnot. Now that shouldn't really affect the people speaking it too much, because it's not like they're trying to come up with these sentences on their own. It's written down in a script. It's not that hard. But the agglutinating sets it apart from English. Isik-Xhosa also has 2 tones, high and low, which is pretty much the second best number of tones behind 0. At least for me, I'm really not good at tones. I'm fairly tone deaf to begin with. But high and low tones are what Japanese has, so I think I could pick that up pretty easily. And then one other thing I found that was kind of confusing, it's not like a major big deal, it's just noteworthy, I think. They use the letter U, for sounds that we in English normally use O's for, and then O's for U's. So at first I was a little confused on how to pronounce this one. I thought maybe I was pronouncing it wrong, but according to the IPA, it's an aw sound. So Isik-Xhosa. It's a long sound, so I'm working on it. I'm trying to get a little bit better at it. but I don't know how long this video is going to last for, so I probably won't be better at it by the end of this video is what I'm saying. But now for my concerns about using Isik Hosa for this language. I don't know if I've ever seen exactly where Wakanda exists. At one point I thought it was off the coast of Africa, like an island. I might have been thinking of Genosha, but I assume Wakanda is near Uganda because there's some kind of morphological similarity there between, Kanda and Ganda. It's not a really hard sound change for languages to make. Isik Hosa is one of the official languages of South Africa, which is nowhere near Uganda. They're both British colonies, but geographically they're not close. The most major language in the region of like Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, that area is Swahili or Kiswahili, which is also a Bantu language, but it's not as related. It's like Bantu is like the Indo-European family. It's got a lot of things. So Isik Hosa is related to Swahili like English is related to Persian, as far as I know. I don't see any reason why that would be wrong. Now, I don't think that they could use Swahili either for the Wakandan language because of all of the loanwords from Sanskrit and Arabic from all the years of trading along the Indian Ocean coast. So, I don't think they should have used Swahili or Isik Hosa for the language of Wakanda, just geographically and also culturally. Like, they should have their own insular language. They didn't specify how long ago it was that the Wakandan people started isolating themselves from everything, but the Bantu invasion wasn't that long ago. That is not something I looked up, though. Okay, I just looked it up. They say that the first invasion that would have went towards Congo and probably Wakanda was 3,000 years ago, so I guess there was enough time. But there would have been a lot more variation over the past 3,000 years. With that amount of isolation, whatever Wakanda is speaking should be incredibly different than everything else around it. So that leaves me with one possible solution to this. Pay one of the thousands of conlangers out there to do it for you. Like, I wish movies would do this more. Like, you got Navi, you got Dothraki, High Valyrian. There's a few major languages, Klingon, of course, Klingon. But it's still a very niche thing. I don't know if producers assume that if you're going to make a language, then you might as well have people speak it. It doesn't matter. You can just make a language for fun. People do it all the time. I did it in high school until I found out other people did it and kind of lost interest. But, I mean, our conlangs on Reddit has several thousand viewers. A couple hundred of them are actually really good at this. But the majority of them tend to do, like, Germanic Romance combination conlangs. Not a whole lot of them seem to have any kind of knowledge of Bantu languages. But we all need to broaden our horizons. And, there's people out there who know this stuff. They could do it. I don't see the point of having this beautiful fictional country with a real-life language other than to make the few 100,000 or million Isik Hosa speakers happy. Because is it really worth it? I mean, why not do it in... I'm totally blanking on what the name of the language from Botswana is. Siswana? Something. I know that the word for language is like a prefix, and then the Tswana part is like who they are. Or maybe it was just easier since John Connie is already a native Isik Hosa speaker that he could probably help everyone else with. But honestly, I really think their best bet would have been to just make up another one. And now to conclude it, I want to talk a little bit about the writing system they had. I would have preferred if they would have given me the entire writing system so I can like point out to them and show you examples of why I don't actually like it. But I don't really like their writing system. I found very few writing systems I do like. I like the way Arabic looks, I like the way Hangul functions, but writing systems always look kind of weird to me. I don't know why. Still working on that. Like even English, like I've been reading English since I was 4 years old, and it looks like random things, and no amount of getting used to that is going to make that go away. But the written language was invented by their production designer, Hannah Beechler, who took an ancient Nigerian writing system called Nsibidi, I think. I believe I'm pronouncing that close enough, Nsibidi. And that was a hieroglyphic writing system, so she spent some time modernizing it. Not modernizing it, but she turned it into an alphabet or an abjad or something. I don't know exactly what each of the letters correspond to. which is why I wish I could have had like a sample of everything, because then I could have at least counted how many letters they had and then worked it out from there. But I'm glad it wasn't something that was just entirely made up, because a lot of times with futuristic language that they just make up, they look very made up. Using the Incivity language and then just altering it, tweaking it, honestly, I'd have just made a different font for it, something that would be unavailable to the people back then, but whatever. I shouldn't be paid to do this. Like, I am totally unqualified to be inventing languages or writing systems. But I like to talk about stuff, and I don't really have anyone else in the world to talk to, so I just talk to this camera. I think that should be good enough. Please leave some comments and try to actually talk to me about this, because I really like languages and I would love to be able to talk to somebody about it. And one last final thing, another famous hostess person is Nelson Mandela. And if you're a kind of person who is convinced that Nelson Mandela died in prison, then how the fuck did he be the president of South Africa? I will never understand how the Mandela effect got its name, when it should obviously just be the Berenstein effect, because that's the one that actually happened. Alright, whatever. Goodbye.